Welcome to Silver Bar Stacker, folks. I hope everybody's doing well and enjoying their Sunday. That's right, folks. It's been a while since we've met together, but I'm glad we're back here together. And we've got a quick one for you today, but an exciting one for you. And I wouldn't actually say it's going to be a quick one, even though I just said that, because it's not going to be that quick of an episode. But we got some interesting things to talk about and some major changes here on the SBS storefront and the horizon. So I'm excited to go through all that stuff, all this new news and all these new happenings that have happened over the past few weeks. And yeah, there's a lot of big changes, and I'm excited to go through all those. So let's kick things off with something interesting. Now, one of our good friends here in the YouTube community, his name is AGAU Stacker, and so AGAU Stacker is one of the very few channels out there that are related to silver stacking that we are avidly following. I try not to miss any of the AGAU Addict episodes because truthfully he's always uploading some awesome stuff. He's always uploading stuff related to vintage silver. He's always collecting things that are really tickling my fancy and that are totally up my alley, and he's always actually teaching me new things all the time. Whether he's intentionally doing that or unintentionally doing that, I'm always learning stuff from him. And so that's why I never try to miss any of his episodes, the same way I try to never miss any of Salivate Metals episodes, or I try to never miss any of Silverstruck's episodes. They put out very, very informative content, and content that's aligned with the content that I'm interested in sharing with you all. So first and foremost, you should go follow and subscribe to AGAU Addict. And the reason I'm mentioning AGAU Addict is because he recently posted a video related to not both of these, but one of these Sunshine Mining little pressed bars. Okay, now these bars in particular were bars that are stamped with Sunshine Mining Company on the front. They kind of look similar, actually, both of these bars, yet they were not actually produced by Sunshine Mining Company. So they were actually produced for Sunshine Mining Company. And actually the first person that pointed this out was actually Poor Man's Gold, who, you know, he's been MIA lately. He hasn't been uploading a whole lot of videos, but he still remains here with us, and he's always in my thoughts. And he's actually the very first person who mentioned to me when I first actually showed this bar that, hey, SBS, you know, that's not actually a Sunshine Mining Company bar. That's actually a Franklin Mint bar that was produced for Sunshine Mine, right? And so I was like, wow, you're very, very right about that. And I don't know why I just glossed over that fact, but he's very right about that fact, that this right here is a 2,000 grains bar that was produced in 1973, especially for the Sunshine Mine by the Franklin Mint. And so this bar right here is 2,000 grains. I think that's about 4.2 ounces if I'm not mistaken. And it's a beautiful, beautiful pure silver bar. So I really like this bar. Now, this bar is kind of smaller. This is a 3 ouncer. This is a 4.2 ouncer, aka 2,000 grains. So this 3 ouncer right here is something that we haven't seen a whole lot of these in the community. Honestly, AGAU Addict recently showed this, and I was like, hey, I've got one of those. But then, like, we're the only people that we're aware of who have one of these. So if anybody else has one of these, AGAU Addict in particular is very, very much wanting to find a little bit more information about these, such as mintage information, any sort of information that we could find about these bars. So when I told him that, hey, I've got one of these, he's like, well, I definitely would like to see that, because that's the only other bar that I'm aware of like this that exists as far as I'm concerned. So he showed his bar, and that actually was a 4-digit serial number bar. These bars, actually, they say Sunshine Mining Company on the front, 1968. So these are some old school grandpa bars for sure. And you flip it over, and this is actually not distributed by the Franklin Mint. This is distributed by W.H. Foster, which is a very, very desirable company to be collecting stuff by. I mean, they've got some beautiful, beautiful pieces that are highly, highly sought after by collectors. And so it's very interesting, honestly, that W.H. Foster created a bar out of Walla Walla, Washington. They created a bar for Sunshine Mining Company out of Kellogg, Idaho. Very interesting, actually, indeed. And so this is the only bar that we're aware of. This one and the one that AGAU Addict has, his has got a 4-digit serial number on the top. And in reality, his numbers are larger and they're spaced out quite a bit more, actually. Whereas this one has only got a 3-digit serial, not a 4-digit serial, and this one's serialized as 505. And these numbers are actually much closer together. So we'll do a comparison. I'll show you what his video. In his video, I'll do a little screenshot and show you what that looks like. But you'll see that those numbers are spaced out quite a bit differently than these numbers. That's very interesting now. So we've got a lower serial here at a 505, and then we've got his 4-digit serial, I believe, in the 2000. So that kind of gives you an indicator so far of what we're kind of maybe can estimate or guesstimate. Maybe it might be the mintage range. Maybe there's a couple thousand of these out there, but not exactly sure. We don't have too much information outside of the fact that these are very, very cool bars. So that was a very interesting find, certainly for AGAU Addict, but also for me. And I'm very excited that we were able to kind of look a little bit deeper at this one, so that we could give AGAU Addict a little bit more information that he was seeking. So cool finds here on the Sunshine Mining Company front. I want to talk a little bit about these Engelhard Australia bars. Now you'll notice here underneath the Engelhard it says Australia, and so these are very, very unique bars. In fact, of the 1 ounce variety, when you're talking about the press variety like these flat press bars, there's only these 3 variations that exist. And so anybody who's really into collecting like all the variations of Engelhard bars knows that, wow, the Engelhard Australia authentic vintage 1 ounce press bars, those are very, very difficult to find. And the reason why they're so difficult to find is not just because there's only 3 of them. Each of these 3 variations are 500 minted, 500 minted, 500 minted, 500 minted. So that means that there's only 1,500 total Engelhard Australia 1 ounce press bars that exist. These 3 bars are very, very rare. Okay, and so when you're a collector, you don't really have too many opportunities to pick up these bars. And so here at SBS, we love Engelhard stuff. We love Johnson Matthey stuff. We love USVI stuff. We love Sunshine Mining stuff. And so we're always kind of on the lookout for really anything by these companies. And when it comes down to Engelhard, I would say that Engelhard quite easily makes up more than 50% of our store inventory. Engelhard is by far our favorite refiner out of anything, even more than Sunshine Mining Company, folks. Yes, so I love Engelhard, and so especially when it comes down to the smaller denominational stuff. I mean, we've got some larger denominational stuff. We've got stuff ranging all the way up into the 100 ounce category. But when it comes down to especially the 1 ounce variations of the bars and rounds, we really, really like to have as many of those examples available, especially when it comes to Engelhard and Johnson Matthey, but especially Engelhard. And so that includes these extremely rare Engelhard Australia 1 ounce silver bars. This, in fact, if you go into the SBS exclusive section, you'll pretty much always find that the set of 3 Engelhard Australia bars, 500 minty each, is always available for sale in the SBS exclusive section. That's a staple product and a permanent product, essentially, on our website. And we're always going to have this available as a set at a slightly reduced price, and we're always going to have each of these bars available separately at a slightly higher premium. You know, if you're just wanting to add one of them particular bars to set, let's say, for example, if you already had the other 2 or one of the other 2 and you're just trying to add one at a time, or for example if you just wanted to add one of the 3 and just so you have a single Engelhard Australia bar example in your collection. You know, sometimes collectors don't need to have every single slightly different variation. They're cool with just having one, and then they'll move on to grabbing a one off of something else, right? So different collectors have different habits, but what we like to do here at SBS is we like to cater to the collectors, and we like to always have things available. And so when it comes down to collectible stuff like this, the prices are going to be wild. Okay, every single time I've seen one of these bars sell, the price is so unpredictable. They'll usually generally go up on an auction. Then what happens is many interested collectors, obviously there's many people going to be gunning after a 500 minted bar, so then generally what happens is people start fighting over it strategically. They figure out whatever their auction strategy is, they try to grab that bar as best that they can, and then ultimately somebody comes out the victor. And what typically happens with these Engelhard Australia bars is they typically usually break the hundreds of dollars of mark. So they're always closing in the hundreds of dollars, right? I've sometimes seen these sell for just a little bit over $100, and that was usually as a fluke, right? I've actually had the opportunity to purchase one of these bars one time. Just one of the series, one of the bars. One time I had an opportunity to purchase it just slightly above $100 because the individual knew, I think, what they had, but they didn't quite realize that it's what it was, because it wasn't marketed as an Engelhard Australia bar. It was just marketed just as that bar. So I essentially was able to win it. Not many people realized it was an Engelhard Australia bar, so there was very little competition on the auction. I came out ending up winning that bar for, just a little over $100 because it wasn't marketed correctly. It wasn't. I don't believe that the seller who put it up on auction really knew that it was a 500 minted bar. They just had marketed it as an Engelhard bar. Right, so nobody was searching for that, nobody knew, and so I came out lucky on that one. But typically, when I bought these bars this is, I would say maybe about a year or so ago, when I was purchasing these bars, whenever I would be able to find them, I was able to buy them just under $200, right? And so that's a very, very good deal. But you don't have very many opportunities to purchase them at that price, and so I knew that. Deep inside I knew, okay, this is a low mintage bar, that is a good price, so I thought, let me get them at that price. And then shortly thereafter, then I would start regularly seeing them sell around the $300-400 range. Okay, and so that's kind of what happens with these low liquid collectibles, is the prices kind of fluctuate, and they don't always go up. Sometimes they go back down, right? And I'll give you an example of that exactly, right? So here at SBS, what I was saying is we always have the set available. We always have each of the individual bars available, and that goes the same for many of the other rare and common items here. We always like to have things available. That's kind of like the name of the game, if you haven't gotten the point yet, is that we always like to have things available for the things that we sell, because it makes it convenient for the buyer, right? So that's why we might not have a super high volume like some of these other big stores that you're used to shopping to, but we have very loyal customers, the few that we do, and so we don't have a high foot traffic, but we have happy customers, I would say, the few customers that we have. So, and that's the reason, is because we are able to offer these things. And so we do try to pretty much on a weekly basis go through our entire store inventory, and that's pretty much like our primary objective outside of just marketing the business. Is primary objective is to keep the pricing competitive, because we want to make sure that our customers are getting the best pricing possible. And so we're pretty much on a weekly basis going through and adjusting our prices in accordance to the market, because sometimes the prices go up, sometimes the prices go down on particular items, and all the prices on all the items are not created equal. They are all going up and down. They're always constantly fluctuating. We don't have any sort of computers in place that are going to automatically update the price. So that's a whole manual process that we do. And so especially when it comes down to low liquid items such as this is very, very much manually calculated, and there's not a lot of comps when it comes down to something like this, and we don't have a lot of units to sell as well. So when there's not a whole lot of units to sell, there's a lot of demand for that item, and you don't really have a good understanding of how much the item should be selling for, what you want to be selling it for. Sometimes the prices can be a little bit high, right? And so in this case, the prices were quite high. Our asking price on these was $795 a bar, okay? And we were actually offering the entire set on auction. This was a short while ago when we were selling on eBay. We're no longer selling on eBay anymore officially, because they are absolute scum. They're scammers, and we'll get into why they're scammers in probably a series of videos, because that's a whole freaking other topic. But essentially, their unsustainable fee structure and the fact that they are literal thieves is the reason why we are no longer selling on that platform. And we're going to be sticking exclusively to Whatnot, who does treat their sellers very, very well. Low fees, very, very trustworthy company so far that I've been able to deal with. So I'll be exclusively selling SBS stuff on Whatnot, as well as the website. That's just a side note. But recently, when we did have an auction on these bars, we had the auction starting at, I believe, $2,000. It was $19.99 and 99 cents was the starting bid price. And we also had each of the bars available for $795 a piece. Okay, so if you bought all three, that'd be about $2,400 or so. So we had these available. These are the options. Buy it now as each bar individual, or you could take part in the auction. Ultimately, nobody took part in that auction, so that auction ended up closing at $2,000 for the set of 3 bars. So that's what, let's just do the math real quick. $2,000 divided by 3, that's $666.66. So these bars did not sell at $666 a piece. What did happen though is that one single individual came through and bought each of the individual buy it nows at $795 a piece. So they were not willing to take part in the auction. They just simply wanted all 3 of these bars for their collection, and all 3 of these bars were available at one time because SBS likes to make things like that available. And yes, the price was kind of high. In fact, the price of $795, offers were allowed, so the individual was allowed to make an offer if they wanted to, but they could also just purchase outright at that price, at that asking price. And truthfully, I have never seen one of these bars sell at anywhere near $795, but that's kind of what I was willing to let these bars go for, because the last bars of these types that are replaced, I spent almost $400. I mean, the auction, actually I spent over $400, because ultimately the auction closed at about 483 if my memory serves me correctly. Sorry, 383. And so after tax and everything, it ended up being over $400 for a single 1 ounce bar that I paid. And the reason that I paid that was because I had already sold one of those bars slightly prior to that for around the $595 range. Okay, so because I sold it at that, I was comfortable paying up to $400 for that bar. Now that I paid up to $400, over $400 for that bar, now I was comfortable selling it for $795. And the reason that it seems so high is because another thing here, eBay's fee structure is completely unsustainable. So out of that $795, if you actually look at the whole fee structure, after all was said and done, I actually only netted about $600 and something dollars. Okay, so there was the margin, much of that margin taken away from eBay there. Regardless, the closing price, as far as the buyer is concerned, what they paid, ultimately was that $795. In fact, they probably paid a little bit more than that, because sometimes they get taxed inappropriately over there as well. So regardless, after all was said and done, $795 was the closing price, and that happened 3 separate times on 3 separate bars. Okay, that's never happened before. It's a world record, you could call it. Okay, I found it also very surprising, because I was honestly willing to let them go for a little bit cheaper. Regardless, that is the latest comp. And what was funny is that after this happened, because this is, it took probably over a year for these bars to sell at that sort of a price. I mean, I sold them for a lower price, but maybe not a year, but it probably took several months to really find a buyer at that asking price. So it's not something that happened overnight. It happened because everything was made available at the same time. The convenience was there, and perhaps the seller, aka SBS, was a trustworthy seller, somebody that the buyer trusted, perhaps somebody that the buyer has done business with before in the past, and so they trusted the seller and they were happy to buy those pieces at that price. Now what's funny is that after these comps have appeared here on eBay, and other collectors who possess some of these bars have some of these bars, I in fact started getting some messages like, hey, did that bar actually sell for $795? And I said, yeah. In fact, it sold 3 times for $795. And so I showed the screenshot. Yep, this is how much the buyer paid. This is how much ultimately we got. And so I was like, yeah, it's a real thing that actually sold for $795. They thought, oh, we probably accepted a lower price. But no, that's actually what the price that they sold for. And they said, okay. Later, I come to find out that same seller, it's a U.S. seller, I come to find out that they have the bar listed for $895, so $100 more than we sold it for. They've got it $895 or best offer, and so that is the highest that I've ever seen it listed for. In fact, that's the price that we have it listed on our website now, because we understand the comps to be $795 a piece. So because of that, our price is also adjusted up, because we're expecting that if we're going to have to replace the bar, it's going to cost us a lot more now. Okay, because the comps, everybody goes by the comps. So now the comps are higher. So now everybody's gonna want a higher price, and that's exactly literally what happened. I mean, I shut down the store for about a couple weeks just to go on inventory. All right, and those 3 bars that we sold were some of the last sales that we put out, and after we kind of shut down the store for our inventory process, we just came back a couple days and started having everything go live again. I come to find out that there's 3 different sellers online who have Engelhard Australia bars. Before this, there were no Australia bars to be found. Now all of a sudden there's 3 that came out of the woodwork because of these sales. I'm thinking now everybody wants to get that $795 a bar. Well, that's not something that happens overnight. First of all, that's not something that any seller will be able to achieve. And truthfully, the reason, probably my opinion, why those sold for that high of a premium is because each of the bars were available at the same time. Right now, if you go on eBay, you're just going to have one. I think there's one seller selling a first series bar, and then there's 2 sellers selling a third series bar. There's no sellers selling a second series bar. When I had the bars available, I had one of each series available, so that's buyer probably just wanted to grab all 3 for their collection, and it was very convenient, and so that they paid the premium to add them, secure them for the collection. They had no interest in being like, oh, I want to get these 2, then wait another year to get this one. They wanted all 3 right away. And so it is my belief that that's why those sold at that price. Now, you got other sellers now. You got one seller from the UK who, in fact, I actually had purchased prior to starting my inventory process. I had actually purchased a third series Engelhard Australia 1-ounce bar from this UK seller for $100 and roughly $80, I think, was the conversion from Great British pounds, and that was, in my opinion, a great price because I had just sold a few of the bars for $795 each. So I thought that's a great price. Okay, so I bought the item. It took them a while to actually ship the item, and so I thought, let me hold off on this because you said you've got a couple more of these. They said that they had 3 of these. I said I would like to actually buy all 3 of them, so let me save on shipping costs. Let me get back in touch with you after I'm done with my inventory process, and I'm going to just buy all 3 of those for me because I just sold 3. I'd like to replace 3. Okay, so I'd like to buy all 3 of them at that $180 asking price. Okay, so all good. They canceled the order. We're ready to repurchase when I get back. Well, when I get back, I think they may have had second thoughts about it, and I come to find out that the bar is sold. I reached back out. I said, hey, I was interested in getting those bars now, and they said, oh, that lot is sold. I thought that was a little bit, unethical, since we had discussed that we would be holding them for me. But regardless, to each their own. Sometimes you're under pressure to sell, and so you sell. So that lot had sold, and now apparently he only had one third series bar available as part of a new lot that he apparently bought within those last 2 weeks. I'm not sure if that's the case or if this is just one bar from the original lot, but apparently this bar now, it was going to cost me roughly $400. So more than double what I had paid for the first one, and that order got canceled. Apparently now the seller in the UK wants me to pay double. So I said, well, I'm not gonna do that because I was ready to pay $180, but not $400. So now this bar is sitting there. I believe this is the cheapest example available for $400 from the UK seller. We've also got a US seller selling the exact same third series bar for $895. Now this seller reached out to me as well, asking me, hey, did that actually sell for $795? I said, yes, it did actually. Here's the proof or whatever. So because they confirmed with me that bar did actually sell for $795, they said, let me list it for $895. So, and that's what they did. I said, that's a fair price to list it for, because that's in fact the price that we've got it listed for on our website right now. After we made that sale, we also increased our price to $895. So I said, yeah, good luck with the sale. It took me, I told them it took me a while to find a buyer at $795, so good luck finding a buyer at $895. We're also in no rush to sell the units that we have because we don't have too many either. So I understand why a seller would ask a high asking price for a very rare and special piece, right? That makes total sense to me as a seller. So we've got the U.S. seller that's got a third series Engelhard Australia 1 ounce bar available for $895 or best offer. And in fact, I was watching that item and they've already sent out an offer for $850. So it's not actually a listing price of $895 because they already sent out an offer for $850. So they're willing to accept low $850 actually, but they have it listed for $895. Now there's only one seller, and that's a seller that I've actually done business with before and is quite a nice seller. They've got quite nice items. That'll be Vintage Bullion Canada. They've got a first series bar. Now that one that they have is quite toned up on the top, but regardless, that is the first of the series. There's a first, second, and third in the series of 1 ounce pressed Engelhard Australia bars. And so what's different about this one is you'll find that the letters and logo and everything have a much more defined look to them. They're like much more bumpy. This is much more smooth on the third series. This is much more bumpy and thick, right? And then on the back too, much more defined, smooth back, but defined letters. Whereas here it's a little bit more smoothened out on that reverse for the third series. Now, when you look at the second series is a little bit unique in that it's kind of like a hybrid in between. You know, it's kind of like, as far as the letters go, it's like not super smooth end, but it's also not super thick. It's somewhere in between. And then on the back, it's got a very, very clean look compared to any of the three. This one's got kind of more of like a pebbled look. This one's got like a semi-pebbled look, very, very faint pebbled look. And this one's just got almost like a clear, like matte sort of look. So that's going to be your second series bar. So that's just something that I wanted to go over, that when it comes down to very, very rare collectibles, the prices are all over the place. I was telling you recently that, you know, I got lucky and I was able to buy one of these bars a little over $100 on an auction because the seller didn't know what they had and they marketed it improperly. I also told you that I was fortunate enough to buy some of these bars for under $200 because, and this was quite a while back, but that was just because I kind of understood the market value. I was able to get them in a private sale, and it was at the right place at the right time. I've also told you that the price has recently kind of doubled to around $400, and that's kind of where I see auctions closing at, and that's where I myself won an auction recently at $383 or something like that. Okay, so for the same freaking bar, you're looking at $100, $200, $400, and now $800. The prices fluctuate wild, and now literally a week or 2 weeks after those $800 sales, you're finding three sellers thinking that they could sell it at the $700 or $800 or $900 or whatever, and yet those have been sitting for days. I mean, I'm sure maybe after this video, perhaps somebody might go over and be like, "Oh, I should add one of those to my collection for cheap," but there's not so many of them to go around. So, and truthfully, each seller would not be able to sell the same things with as much ease because it depends on many circumstances. First, it depends on the seller's reputation. Second, it depends on what's available at the same time. A lot of times these collectors want to buy many things, a part of the whole set at the same time, right? That's why we cater to collectors many times here on the SBS side. We have full year Prospector sets available. We always have the full fractional Prospector sets available. We also have many other types of exclusive sets available. So if you go to the SBS exclusive section, you'll find that we have many, many things available that cater to collectors, and these sort of things, these sort of things that collectors want to be collecting, they're willing to pay the premium sometimes for that. That's where the value is derived from. It comes from the mintage. It comes from the quality and condition of the item. It comes from the desirability or the look of the bar or the round, right? So there are many, many factors. Was it pressed or poured? Many, many factors that will determine the final price of an item, and sometimes it makes no sense at all, right? Sometimes the price will be wildly up and down and up and down, and so that's why, in my view, especially if you're a beginner collector, buying the collectible stuff can be much, much more risky. If you're buying stuff close to spot price, meaning just generic stuff, then you're literally only having to pay attention to that one indicator of, ooh, spot price goes up, spot price goes down. But once you start getting into more collectible stuff, and especially the vintage stuff, things become a lot more complicated because there are many different indicators that you need to pay attention to that will adjust the market value of your items up or down, right? And so sometimes you're not always buying items at the spot melt value. In fact, rarely are you buying these types of things. I've never had an opportunity to purchase an Engelhard Australia bar at melt value. I'll just put it that way, right? So since you are not buying them at the bottom melt value, you will have paid some sort of elevated premium. You don't know how much of a premium, but you paid some sort of an elevated premium for that collectible item. And so you need to determine, is that a good value? Did I buy that low enough or not? That's always a consideration when you're buying a collectible, is you don't know how much of a premium is too much of a premium, right? Because sometimes that price goes up and then it's like, oh, cool. Good thing I paid such a, in hindsight, low premium for that item. But a lot of times what happens is that, oh, I bought this $800 bar and now, well, it's not, it's not even selling easily for $400 anymore. So is that an $800 bar? We don't know. That's the issue with collectibles, and especially when it comes down to low liquid stuff where you're not exactly sure how many more surviving examples are out there. It becomes a guessing game. Like, gosh, how many more opportunities am I going to have to buy this thing? But let me tell you one thing, as a I wouldn't say a seasoned collector, but as a slightly experienced collector, let me tell you one thing. You almost always have another opportunity to buy whatever it is that you think you will never see again. I almost every single time that I've ever said that, oh, I don't think I'm ever going to see this again, I see it again. So that's one piece of advice as from one collector to another collector, and I hope you have a blessed day. Cheers.